Lewis Hamilton will be competing for Ferrari in the Tifosi's next race at Imola. Many in the paddock found it difficult to resist daydreaming about Hamilton donning the recognizable red following a weekend that will never be forgotten at the F1 Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix. Despite losing 5 seconds due to a spin in the gravel, Hamilton finished 6th, 1 position ahead of George Russell, his Mercedes teammate. After finishing 3rd in the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix behind Red Bull and McLaren, Ferrari exuded a sense of despair akin to a wasted opportunity. The much-discussed first major Ferrari improvement of 2024 was never meant to be the car that some overly enthusiastic parties named the Evo, or 2.0 inches, in the lead-up to Imola. However, given that Ferrari had won a race and overall began the season as Red Bull's closest challenger, there was clear hope that it would cut the gap with its primary foe. Welcome to F1 Opinion. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon for more updates. That being said, it would be considered a glaring letdown to lose to McLaren a second time in a row, let alone to fall short against Red Bull. But after the race, some influential people seemed more irritated by what dropped Ferrari to 3rd than by the actual outcome. After a Grand Prix in which he held off Lando Norris for a considerable amount of the race, but ultimately finished a rather lone 3rd, some 7 seconds behind both the race winner, Max Verstappen, and Norris, who crossed the line practically underneath his rear wing, Charles Leclerc was clearly not happy. Leclerc's attention was diverted despite the fact that this was a podium for Ferrari on home territory, in front of the Tifosi and only a short distance from its Maranello headquarters. Fred Vasseur, the team principal, agreed with this assessment. Although finishing 8 seconds behind Verstappen on the podium would have been a solid result for Ferrari at most races this year, he was not inherently unhappy with the outcome. However, he had the same feeling as Leclerc that more was at stake. Leclerc had acknowledged that the finish was a little worse than anticipated after a strong start to the weekend, qualifying 4th fastest and then taking over 3rd on the grid as a result of McLaren's Oscar Piastri receiving a penalty. Because of the narrow gap separating the top 3 teams and the difficulty of passing Imola in its single, relatively small DRS zone, the outcome of the race on Sunday would almost certainly depend on track position. Given that the Ferrari engine's turbo arrangement offers good power delivery off bends, but may be weak at the very top end, this design isn't always the best one. Leclerc, meanwhile, was equally certain that Ferrari's engine strategy at Imola was lacking in comparison to that of McLaren and Red Bull. Because he lost time on the start-finish straight as he started his qualifying laps, he believed that the battery deployment was a little wrong. Perhaps that indicated that, on a track like this one, the engine's characteristics needed to be properly compensated for. Leclerc's qualifying lap was undoubtedly hindered from the start. Even by the Tamburello chicane, which officially starts the lap, he was over a 10th slower than Norris and over a quarter of a second behind Verstappen. However, Vasseur wasn't entirely persuaded that using the energy recovery technology would be a problem. He appeared to acknowledge that we need to change our approach, to do something differently, but he also said, "You have to downplay this a little bit." In his opinion, while the run to the first chicane was important, Verstappen's tow from Nico Hülkenberg was the primary contributing element. Although it's impossible to say for sure, it seems more likely that Leclerc's run to turn 1 beat Norris and Verstappen. This is just another example of Ferrari appearing weaker on Saturday and stronger on Sunday. Even after 1 lap, the SF24 still appears a little less powerful. Regarding whether a better finish could have been achieved by starting earlier, it is likely that the top 3 cars would have had a strong chance of winning if they had maintained their position on the course. Leclerc and Vasseur believed that running behind Norris for such a long time had a significant impact on his pace, which appeared to be weaker than Norris's in the closing stages when the McLaren surged onto Verstappen's tail. They argued that Leclerc could have maintained the outstanding pace he displayed behind Norris on the hards if the race had been run more smoothly in open air, with the tempo and tires controlled. Even though the season's first significant Ferrari update affected the entire vehicle from front to rear, Vasseur never anticipated it to be a game-changer. Although it was substantial, it was insufficient to defeat McLaren and even Red Bull. With a lead over Red Bull that was barely inside its seasonal average, Leclerc was only a few tenths off the lead, but appeared to be stronger throughout the race. However, it seems that Ferrari still needs to improve the setup of its vehicles in order to maximize performance over the course of the weekend. That was discussed even before the official update hit the track. And this past weekend Carlos was especially frustrated. Carlos trailed Leclerc the entire way, and although he was hopeful about what his teammates' performance suggested Ferrari could be able to do in the upcoming races, he acknowledged that his personal problems were perplexing. A solid but not revolutionary Ferrari gain probably just means it stays in the running, since Red Bull is still refining its own vehicle, and McLaren's significant Miami upgrade is likely to prove more helpful at Imola. This highlights the need for ongoing development, as McLaren continues to demonstrate its ability to add significant performance boosts during the season, and Red Bull continues to refine its class-leading vehicle. Vasseur stated that another update won't be coming for 2 or 3 races, meaning Ferrari's prospects in Monaco and Canada will rely on setting up the car properly and making the most of its enhanced capabilities. There's a sense that Red Bull will continue to have simpler, more dominant weekends on courses that don't suit its car well, like Imola. However, the advances made by Ferrari and McLaren have at least brought the lead fight close enough to be influenced by team performance, weekend conditions, track features, and the various advantages and disadvantages of each package. Red Bull and McLaren, Ferrari's F1 rivals, are allegedly doing something weird to increase their straight-line speed, according to Charles Leclerc. Following the race, Leclerc noted that Ferrari was trailing their competitors by too much, and that he thought Red Bull and McLaren had figured out a way to get more power out of their engines. He said to Sky, "I think our race pace is very, very strong. Looking back at the qualification, I'm more hopeful than I was yesterday, because here is where I believe we fall short on a weekend such as this. Looking back at the data, I would have predicted that we would lose turns 2, 3, and 4, which would have again involved the tire. This gives me hope." That was untrue, though. We lost everything in the straights, and Red Bull and McLaren are experimenting strangely with energy. We'll investigate that. We have a good chance of returning to the top step of the podium once we address that. At the end of the 63-lap race, Leclerc was roughly 8 seconds behind Norris and Verstappen. What are your thoughts? Let us know in the comment down below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for new upcoming videos of Formula 1. Thanks for watching.